Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast, the show for people who want to live sustainably without the global overwhelm. We're here to lighten your environmental load. We celebrate local sustainability across Australia and connect you to the solutions and people already doing great things for a healthier planet. Living sustainably starts with good humans like you, people who care about the natural environment, our communities, and the everyday spaces we live in. Each conversation helps you feel reassured that living lighter on the planet is achievable and genuinely feels good to be a part of. From the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people in Newcastle, Australia, join me, Marty Lee, as we explore how to consume less, build stronger community connections, and thrive in your neighbourhood, wherever you call home. Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Composting at home isn't a new trend. In fact, it's been around for over 130 years and is one of the most localised and best ways to keep food waste out of landfill. In this episode, you'll learn everything you need to know about composting on a doable scale, from starting your first pile to knowing exactly what to do with it once it's ready. My guest is Dr. Ernie Harbott, business owner of Compost Culture and founder of Soil Sisters in Singleton, New South Wales. Ernie's hands-on compost education reaches everyone, from farmers and schools to backyard gardeners and small businesses. Her advocacy shows that composting is about more than just what happens in your own backyard. It's about building a community of people who are dedicated to turning waste into something worth spreading back into the earth. G'day, Ernie.
Hi, Marty.
It's wonderful to have a chat with you today because being in the Hunter Valley, which is close to Newcastle, your name gets around a lot as the sort of the composting expert in the region.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's a nice positive,
It's
isn't
very
it?
flattering, yes.
But why would that be? Like, what has made you get to this point of being an expert in compost?
Oh, I think I make a lot of noise. And despite being very shy, I think I have to put myself out there and go for it for the greater good. And compost is definitely the greater good.
Tell us your story about how you got to this point.
I've been asked this, like, what's your first memory of composting? And I think it would be that when I was probably an early teenager, my dad built like the Rolls Royce of compost bins. It was brick and it had beautiful slots for the planks to go in at the front. And I used to just go down to the back of the yard and watch the mice and the cockroaches and everything just come and go. It was just this fascinating ecosystem. And I've always been into the environment and ecology, and I kept sort of composting off and on. You know, as you move through life, you live in different housing arrangements and it's not always possible. I always tried. I think it wasn't until I came back from living overseas, I moved back to New South Wales, to the Hunter Valley mining town, and I think I wanted to push back on that. I really felt my environmental background come out. So first thing was, I guess, I wanted to try and grow my own food, started exploring that, radio talkback, podcast, books, and realised, I'm going to need good soil amendment. That's a bit, all those products are expensive. Well, compost is cheap. Let's make compost. Made my own compost and started going down that rabbit hole of soil amending and growing your own food. The opportunity to start a community garden in Singleton came up, and I did that. And obviously compost, we needed lots of it. Got into that. Things really pushed along when I entered motherhood, and I wanted to give my kids the best start in life and give them the best quality food I could. And it really wasn't out there. And that's when I realised how broken the food system was and that I needed to do something about it. So pushed ahead with, the community garden and trying to get the word out there. I joined Slow Food Singleton to connect to the local food system, kept reading the books and following the podcasts, and got into permaculture, regenerative agriculture, started to discover about the soil food web, and was sitting down one night and I watched a documentary called Kiss the Ground. And after I watched that, I couldn't get off the couch until I did something. I had to decide what it was I was going to do to make things better. And from the couch, there's not much you can really do except start a Facebook group. So I started Soil Sisters Singleton with the idea that to connect a lot of the transient and foreign women in our community to the local women and give the local women a sense of purpose and connect us all through soil and growing culturally significant foods, but just growing food and just getting our hands in the soil. It's such a primal and culturally significant thing and a connecting thing, and it builds community. And I was connected already to the community garden, so I had an outlet for that. And I was already donating produce and just little bits and pieces that would help people in the community.
What I'm hearing from your story is that whole concept of you can start where your concerns are and what's important to you. And then from that, it's very obvious how much it went from this is you trying to solve your own problem in your own backyard to now what can I do more in the community, and look how much it's grown, and then how much you've done a deep dive into composting.
Yeah, well, Soil Sisters started with the idea that one person can make a difference. And the idea was if I could just reach one person in the community and make their life better, then Soil Sisters Singleton would have succeeded. And well, I've definitely achieved that. We've got, 1,300 followers now, and they're not just in Singleton, they're all over the world. And they're not just sisters, there are a lot of brothers too. And the other idea was baby steps, just making it achievable. Everything seems so overwhelming. So followed that rabbit hole and kept looking into learning more and following all the greats. And then I was turning my compost one day, like knee deep in beautiful, microbially rich compost. The serotonin was pumping, the oxytocin was pumping. I'm getting a little bit high like I always do. And I had one of these epiphanies, only this one stuck for some reason. The brilliant idea was, wow, this feels so good. I should just do this every day. And
how did that go?
Well, here we are. Quit my job, changed my whole life, and now I'm a full-time compost collaborator. But there were a few steps before that. Of course, being a scientist and having a PhD wasn't enough. I thought I need to have more qualifications behind me. How do you get qualified in compost? I looked into the Master Composting program, which is a thing in the United States and in England. Not so big here, but I did find one place, only one in the Southern Hemisphere, that had a Master Composter course, and that was Brisbane. And I did that over 2 weekends, and that was actually the birth of my Compost Passion T-shirts. You can't go to a composting workshop with other Master Composters or wannabe Master Composters and not have a T-shirt that declares your love of compost.
And so what do you mean by your compost T-shirts?
So if you've ever been on Soil Sisters Singleton, you've probably seen photos of me, and I'm nearly always wearing a T-shirt that has a message around compost. The one I'm wearing today says, "Be like compost." I have one for my business, Compost Culture. Probably my favourite one is Compost the System. Every time I'm feeling very frustrated, I put that one on and parade around thinking that everybody's listening to my T-shirt, but probably not. But I make them for friends and peers who've inspired me, and they have personalised messages connecting me to them and compost. Costa Georgiades actually has a couple because he's very inspirational.
That you gifted him or that you
Yes.
don't?
No, you can't buy them. They're
they're personally made by you?
Personally made, they're gifts, they're bespoke. And I've had a few people ask, how can I buy one? The only way is, you got to worm your way into my heart and and do something with compost, I guess.
It's a bit like your front door. It's not a T-shirt, but you do have a sign on your front door that says trespassers will be composted.
Yes, yes, and it's highly likely, yes. If you annoy me, you will be composted. And then I still felt like I had this little knowledge gap that was how I can smell that the compost is good. I feel that it's good, and I sense like that it's ready, that it's full of life. But is that going to get me over the line with clients? And as a scientist, I thought, what I really want to be able to do is verify what's in my compost. Like, does it have the life I feel it does? Is that smell due to the great aerobic microorganisms in there and diversity of them? So I did a microscopy course, the good old Dr. Elaine Ingham Soil Food Web School. I didn't go all the way to the end of the consulting program. It raised more questions for me than it answered, maybe as a scientist. And I'd already done a PhD, so I didn't feel like I needed to do a project. But it really did give me lots of skills with the microscope, how to assess compost and soil. And it just opened up this whole new world of being able to see what's in the soil and compost. And so exciting. And I just love taking that gift to workshops, especially with farmers who are just coming to terms with the fact that their soil is a living organism. But once they see the things moving around and they see that it's alive, it's an absolute game changer. So once I had that, I felt like I was ready to start with my business, and I've been compost collaborating ever since.
How many years has that been now?
I think we're coming into about 2 years. I was slow to start up. I was still working and I was waiting for a redundancy to come through, and yay, it did. And it's freed me up now.
Like composting, it takes time.
It does.
I used to have a compost bin many, many moons ago. It never seemed to work. Maybe I didn't know what I was doing. It seemed like it was going to be too complex. And then in my council area, a FOGO bin was introduced, and that is the green waste. So it's food organics, garden organics bin. And I just went, oh, hallelujah. You know, like my composting nightmare has finished. I can just put everything in the green waste bin. It's been a number of years now. Most councils, all councils need to have some kind of FOGO in their council area by 2030, I think it is. It's a big system kind of thing, and I've sort of looked into that a little bit more. It's great on so many levels, but I am ready to get back to basics, to go back to I need to restart that compost in my own backyard. How do I do that?
That's a big question. First of all, I'm really sorry you had a compost nightmare experience.
It just didn't work. It didn't have what you were talking about, all those nice smells and everything. It just looked dry and rat prone. And I think even because we had rats, we had snakes as well. And it was also in the wrong part of the yard in the house. So it wasn't very convenient for me to go. So I think there's a whole multitude of factors for me. So I'm keen to start again with some great experience.
Yeah, I think that compost is this sort of mystery box. People think they can put things in and get something out, and they don't understand what goes on in the box. And it's not that scary, and it's actually really cool and exciting and fun. A lot of the time now, people are afraid to, like literally but figuratively, get their hands dirty or composty. I think they're scared of the unknown. They don't know like if there are pathogens in there or what's going on. They don't know like what to do if it's starting to go this way or that way, you know, getting too dry or getting too smelly. And I used to say, you know, when people said, what's the one bit of advice you can give someone who wants to start composting? And I would just say, just get in there and have a go, get your hands composty. Don't be afraid. You can't fail. But then when they did fail, where did that leave them?
Like me, I suppose, and just in that whole give up mode and go, oh, that was
It's
just
too hard. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. And a lot of it is really just giving people confidence, which is what my business mostly does. It just gives people the confidence to compost. I think innately we all have a knowledge around natural systems, and we do need to trust our gut more. But for those of us who are not practiced in that, someone to just hold their hand through that process and give them confidence and just the facts, a few principles, and help them through it. So I would say reach out. There are lots of composting groups on Facebook, or a composting podcast, or get a good book, or come to Soil Sisters Singleton, where pretty knowledgeable composters, and get some good advice about where to start and what to do. The thing with composting is there isn't any one solution. It's really beautiful. It's absolutely tailorable to your circumstances. And that's the only way it will really become sustainable, is if you do it the way that works for you.
So we need to talk about what ingredients make up a backyard compost. But you've just touched on another really important question of everyone's household is very different. Not everyone lives in a house with a backyard. And if you do live in a house with a yard or access to a yard, you might be a one-person household, two-person household, four-person household. How does your compost need to change with the household that you have?
So there is a solution for everyone. You don't need a backyard to compost. You don't even need a garden to put the compost when it's finished. If you're a really passionate composter, there's still an outlet for that compost. There's no shortage of people who are happy to take free compost. This is a really important part of the compost story, which is that it doesn't happen in isolation. Even if you are one person composting at home, it never happens in isolation. You're part of a community. So you inevitably end up taking other people's materials and compost them, and you give them the gift of something resulting from that compost at the end. And the solution for people who don't have a place to use the compost but still are interested in composting, for example, you can compost bokashi or worm farms on a balcony or in a small space. But you might not have anywhere to put the compost when you're done. There are community gardens, there are nursing homes, there are preschools who would gladly take your free soil amendment, and that connects you to community. And then when you're like me, when you're composting, when you can't get enough composting material to meet your habit, that's where you reach out to your community and you take on their scraps and their coffee grounds and their shredded paper. Worm farms and bokashi are good solutions for small spaces like balconies, things like that. If you're not interested in actually composting at your place but want to contribute to compost, you can collect your scraps and take them to a community garden or a nursing home or a preschool or a school, somewhere where you know they're composting. The other way to do that is, if you only make a small amount of organic material, is you can freeze it. You can store it in the freezer and it doesn't smell, and then you take it when the bag's full or whatever. We have some buckets that go out to some people in our community, and they fill it up with kitchen scraps, and by the time we get them done at the community garden, they're pretty smelly, but it's not a problem. Like, they come back to life once we mix them with, balance them out with some carbon material.
Because composting isn't just about food, it's about a balance of other materials.
Yes.
Earlier, we talked about the types of ingredients you need to start a compost. Let's go for a tour in your backyard where we will talk through the layers that need to happen so that I can get my compost started in my backyard, and maybe the listeners can too.
Oh, are you sure you want to take this magical mystery tour with me?
I do. Let's go. Do I need my shoes back on?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, okay.
It might
Let
be a
me
bit
just grab
wet.
them.
So we'll make our first stop here at the worm farms, all of which I've picked up from council clean-up curbside collections.
Oh, gosh. I love to hear that you're a bulk waste clean-up person, because it's amazing what people throw out in bulk waste, isn't it? And I'm sure that these would have been thrown out because people would have started the worm farm and, just like with me with the compost, and just gone, that's not working for me.
I cannot stand waste, and that's one of the main reasons why I compost. And it's really hard for me to drive around the neighbourhood during council collection. So these worm farms are very neglected, but they chug along just fine. And they're actually my solution to dealing with a glut of shredded paper and coffee grounds. So I collect coffee grounds from a local cafe and shredded paper from the doctor's surgery, and I was just getting too much to be in balance with my other materials in my other composts. And I just, you never waste anything. So I just thought, I wonder if the worms would deal with only coffee grounds and shredded paper, and that, animal cruelty people wouldn't come after me for hyping up my worms. But they actually do really well. They thrive on neglect. So I've got 4 worm towers here, like worm farms, the commercial ones.
And they're all under the cover of the veranda.
Yeah, under the veranda cover.
Because otherwise worms can fry.
They still get very hot, even under here. But if they do die, that you've still got your reserve of worm eggs usually. But I try to keep them cool. One of the good tips is to freeze some kitchen scraps, and then you put them in on hot days, and the worms can enjoy the coolness of that. But
they respond well to
it slowly melts, and they'll get the cool water coming through. And yeah. I mean, and the thing is, you don't ever introduce a new material to the whole farm. You just put it in one section. So if they're not real fond of it, they can move to the other end. These are just coffee grounds and shredded paper. And I usually put like a layer of shredded leaves or something tastier, wood chips on top, just as a blanket. But, if you're in inner city and you've got access to a cafe coffee grounds and office shredded paper, you can still compost. and you just have to find some worms to inoculate it with.
And then from the worms, so they give you worm castings and what I've called in the past as worm wee.
So worm wee is not a guaranteed product. Ideally, your farm shouldn't be so moist that it is dripping, like 1 or 2 drops a day is okay. But if they're dripping a lot of liquid, it's too moist for the worms. And that product that comes out, I call it worm wee because it is a waste product, not a amendment product. You don't know how anaerobic it is. You don't know how long it's been sitting there in the bottom of the farm. You don't know what's been breeding up in it. It's not dangerous, but it's not the quality product that you can get from worm farms. And worms produce the best compost product there is. So I swear by worms.
Have you got an example in any of these worm towers of what the product, a worm product might be?
Yep. So that's pretty finished.
So it's quite
compost.
dark and it's moist and it's holding
it's like
together.
Chocolate cake.
Yeah,
like a really good chocolate cake. Yeah. And the worms just, because of the relationship with the bacteria in their gut, they just produce the best compost there is. It doesn't get hot because the worms wouldn't like that. So it doesn't kill weed seeds, but it does deal with pathogens because of the good balance of microbes in a worm's gut. If you want to make a liquid like compost extract from worms, you would take some finished compost and put it in water and extract it that way. But the stuff that drips out, it's not that bad. You can still water it out, but you don't know what the quality of it is.
Yeah, so having it called a worm wee is a great realisation.
Because you wouldn't drink wee.
It's an excreted product that's not going to be used.
This one's pretty gross. This is my black soldier fly farm. A lot of them just live in the worm farms anyway. This usually smells, but I haven't fed it for a while. This is like the absolute most putrid stuff that we have, like bones, meat scraps, like the grossest of the gross goes in here because black soldier fly larvae just love that stuff. I've got a lot of slaters in here and probably cockroaches at the moment, but black soldier fly larvae are too efficient at composting for me to be a real fan. I have them just because they deal with meat really well, but what they do is they accumulate all the food that you feed them so well and they become so nutrient rich in themselves, like they're just really good little protein fat storehouses. So they make great pet food or for chickens or whatever, but they don't excrete a lot. So they don't produce a lot of compost. So I guess it depends on like your goal with when you're composting. If you just want to get rid of waste, they're great little
waste munchers.
Yep.
But so the byproduct of them is not
there's not a lot of frass. They just don't produce a lot.
So that's a bit like having the difference between having chickens to having a rabbit, where the rabbit will munch but it doesn't produce anything good that can sort of go back into the soil.
Rabbit poop's pretty good, but it is very compact, yeah. I mean, they're very similar to chickens as well as composters. They do all the work for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. If your goal is not to produce like a specific product that you can move around, if you're happy to just see your waste disappear, that they're great for that. And I just keep them because I'm a composter.
Yeah,
Bit of everything.
And something like what you said before about bones and meat and all that that can't normally go in your compost and your worm farm.
Yeah, it can.
Oh, can it?
It can.
Oh, fancy that. I didn't even think it could.
Well, it's not recommended for beginners because if you're not keeping everything in balance, your carbon and nitrogen in balance, it can get smelly or it can attract vermin. So this speaks to, I have principles about composting. The first one's diversity. So diversity of materials is key. The more diverse the materials, the better. Not just different kinds of materials, but different sizes and shapes, moisture levels in your materials coming from different places. When I feed the worm farms and it's just coffee and paper, I'm making a trade-off with that concept of diversity with my second principle, which is tolerance. So if you can put up with a smelly whatever compost, great, you put your meat, you put your dairy in there. If you can deal with vermin, don't go down there, don't turn it, don't take care of it. Or if you can deal with waiting a really long time for compost, don't turn it, don't keep things in balance. But if you can tolerate paying it attention and keeping check on it, gathering a diversity of materials, you're going to get a better quality product. But if you can tolerate not having a great quality product or just waiting even longer for your product, that's okay. So I talk about composting as there's a solution that fits everyone. And so it's based on, diversity, tolerance, and then the other principle is maturation, which there's no way around that. People talk about getting finished compost, in record time. Yeah, you can get finished something, but it's not compost. And then the quality of the compost develops with age. So the longer you can wait, the longer you leave it undisturbed for those microbial and fungal communities to develop, the richer the product you'll get.
How long does compost take? Is that like how long is a piece of string?
It is.
Right.
It is. And it depends on diversity, tolerance, and what are your goals in composting? Is it just to manage your waste and, sort of put it back into your soil? Or is it to grow nutrient dense, amazing vegetables for your family? Or is it to have, biologically alive soil? It depends what your goal is as to how finished is finished.
Great. Let's go on to the next one. So we've done the worm farm and the fly, and they're underneath the veranda. And we're just walking out to the back of the yard where now there's these two very big structures.
These are the
How big are these?
Royce.
This is about as tall as me, and of course that's ridiculous because I don't know how tall I am, but it comes up to my chin.
So these are, your pretty high maintenance system. So this is where someone with a lot of tolerance for turning, sourcing materials, babying it along comes in. So that's me. So we've got a pallet, and on the pallet is some landscape fabric so that the materials don't fall through the pallet. And then I've got a wire cage. It's about 1 metre in diameter, about 1.2 metres high. The compost fills it about 2/3, 3/4 full. It would have been closer to full when I started it. This is a special biologically active job. This one, I create a very specific mix of carbon to nitrogen materials, a lot of diversity, and really good quality materials because I want this one to be really biologically active. I mix it really well on a tarp, get the moisture level right, and then it all goes into the cage and I monitor it with a thermometer. Once it's been hot enough for long enough to kill pathogens and weed seeds, I disassemble it very strategically and put it back together so that different parts that weren't in the centre of the pile now are in the centre of the pile, so they get the chance to be heated up enough to deal with pathogens and weed seeds. And I do that until the compost tells me it doesn't need to be turned anymore, which is when the temperature comes down.
So this would be quite high maintenance,
Yes.
intense composting.
Yes, it is.
I mean, this is a big setup. We'll have the photo on the blog post as well. It's fascinating. I've never seen anything like this before.
But the beauty of this is you wouldn't just make this to then, throw it on your garden. This is going to be a really biologically active, I'll keep feeding this and monitoring it until the biology has developed to my satisfaction, which I use my microscope to check it. And once the biology is good enough, then I would probably spread it out as a compost extract. So I can make it go a lot further than just the solid compost. So I extract it into water and water it out. So I can spread the biology a lot further. And so even though this will reduce even further, a very small amount of compost goes a really long way. And I can give this to clients and friends and use it to inoculate their compost piles. Yeah.
What have you put in this to get to this point?
What materials?
Yeah, what material? What ingredients or materials do you need to put in here?
Well, the good old coffee grounds and shredded paper as well. My signature ingredient is gum leaves because everybody says that they're impossible to compost, they never break down, or, I love a good challenge. And I think it's like a uniquely Australian ingredient. So I feel like we've all got to deal with them. So I do. This one would have wood chips. This one has autumn leaves, which, I absolutely regret using.
Why is that?
They're just so hydrophobic and they just blow away and they don't absorb the water and they gravitate to the edges of the pile and they never break down, and they were a nightmare. And this, whenever I turned it, they would blow away. And this would have lawn clippings, this would have weeds, this would have not so much a food scrap system. Oh, and probably alpaca poo. So my high nitrogen, I can easily source in Singleton is alpaca poo. Yeah.
How did you know that was something that you could put in this compost?
Well, you need a carbon source, a nitrogen source, and then you need a high nitrogen source, which is usually like a manure or blood and bone or something like that. Manure is like a little hard to come across in town. Blood and bone is expensive, and the idea is to reuse waste materials or materials that have nowhere else to go rather than spend on them. And there are a lot of alpaca farmers in town, and most of them don't know what to do with their beans, so I'm happy to take them. They are an interesting material. I think they release the nitrogen over a really long period because it's in little round balls, whereas other manures are kind of like just spread. So I think they tend to release the nitrogen over a really long period, which means my pile maintains its heat for a very long time. And
so you've got a really long temperature gauge hanging out of your compost heap. So think of a meat thermometer, but on a bigger scale.
1 metre, yeah.
Yeah, 1 metre thermometer gauge. What is the temperature there right now?
At the moment it's 60. It's still quite warm. I do need to turn it again, probably. I have another temperature probe, which is like a wireless one. It connects to an app on my phone. I'm not one for tech, but
you love that part of the tech side of things.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So if that's 60 and you're saying it needs to be turned, is that the temperature that you need to be turned, or what is determining when it needs to be turned?
So the heat's generated by the actions of the microbes, and like us, they need food, water, air, and love to do their thing. The food's pretty much decided. I decide that at the start I work out how much carbon to nitrogen I need, and I create it accordingly. Moisture, they need about 60% water. It does dry out, so I have to keep watering it. And when I turn it, I add more moisture, make sure the moisture's up. Oxygen's one thing that oxygen will only diffuse about 30 centimetres into the pile, and you can see there's no chimney or anything. So the fact that they heat up really high means they're using all that oxygen, and I know that once they sort of start to slow down, like the temperature drops, it's not because of a shortage of materials. The moisture I can kind of keep adding, so it's that oxygen that's starting to become limiting.
Wow, see, this is the whole science thing that, like, I've just gone, that blows me away. That sounds really complex. I'm glad it's on the podcast. It's not complex to you.
It's not complex. They have the same requirements as us: food, air, water, and love. It doesn't complain, it doesn't whinge, so I have to take its temperature and feel it and smell it. You know, people are afraid to get their hands composty, and they shouldn't.
But I think compost also has that visual and olfactory kind of sense that goes with it.
It's that earthy smell, when you're doing it right. Yeah, and I think people get turned off because quite often it's not being done right and it smells sour, or it smells putrid, or it smells like sulfury. But compost that's in the right balance with enough moisture, enough oxygen, there's nothing that smells better. You can, it literally feels like you can eat it, and like it would feel good.
It smells like the earth.
Yeah. So the other fancy compost I have over there is, it's based on the Johnson-Su bioreactor method, but it's not a strict Johnson-Su bioreactor, because they require constant irrigation. So they rely on the fact that you keep the moisture up. And in the Australian context, it's really not a sustainable way to compost. So this one is sort of set and forget. The day you put it together is a bit of hard work. It's mostly wood chip. And the idea is that the last compost we had a look at, I turn it. So that's okay for bacteria. They can be tumbled and turned and broken up. But fungi like stability, and they don't like to be turned. It upsets the hyphal networks, and those networks are really important in creating soil structure and putting out the nutrients that they put out and feeding the soil. So a Johnson-Su bioreactor, you put together fungally favourable foods like wood chips, and you keep them moist and you don't turn it. But you have that problem that you still need to keep everything oxygenated. And I said before that you have like 30 centimetres of material before. So this one's got a chimney in the centre.
From the outside, it looks the same as the one where big cylindrical structure, nearly as high as me. It looks the same, but when you get up close, it does look that slightly different. You can see it's got the wood chips, and you're pointing to a hole in the middle.
So the oxygen can probably diffuse enough, and I just have to keep it fairly moist. I don't keep it as moist as the Johnson-Su bioreactors recommend, but we're in Australia. This one, you sort of keep it wrapped. I'm not thrilled about the idea of plastic landscaping fabric, and at the community garden, we don't use it. So we sacrifice the outer layer, it goes dry, and it doesn't usually compost. But I had this lying around, and I thought it's better to use it than send it to landfill or something. Helps keep it a little moist, but really I just have to keep watering. And so this one's like a set and forget kind of thing. wait a year, the worms start to move in, the fungal hyphae can move throughout it, they don't get disturbed, they don't get turned over. The bacteria can still do their thing because they've got enough oxygen, they've got enough moisture. Oh, there's a weed growing on the side there. That happens because you don't turn it. But then the worms come in, and worms make fantastic compost as well. And so you've got a real community starts to develop in it. And the other thing I've started to think about is the saprophytic fungi that develop in this kind of a composting system are only decomposers. That leaves like the other 50% of fungi, which are mycorrhizal fungi, and they occur in conjunction with plant roots. And I'm thinking, if I really want a fungally dominant compost, which is good for putting out on higher succession plants like fruit trees and like your forests are fungally dominant. So that's the difference between the kind of compost produced by the bacterially dominated one that you turn and this one where it's fungally dominated that you don't turn. If I want the most fungi in it, I need to introduce plant roots. And so I'm quite happy when a weed does the job for me. But later on, I'll actually put a cover crop on the top. I'll plant seeds on the top, and I just keep monitoring it with my microscope.
And the temperature of this one is quite different, whereas the first one we looked at was around the 60-degree mark.
Yeah.
This one is sitting about the 35.
Yeah, so Johnson Sioux shouldn't get too hot. They'll get a little bit hot because they've got quite a density of material and things just have to settle down. Once it settles down and reaches a sort of stable temperature, which it has now, that's when you introduce worms, but I shouldn't have to introduce them. They'll probably just find their way in there.
Is that because it's on a pallet?
They just find their way in. The eggs are on the materials that you put in there. Yeah, the worms are everywhere, same as the biology that you never have to inoculate compost piles. These bacteria and fungi are just everywhere in the air, on our skin. They're the ones in our gut.
What did you say this one was used for once it's done its job?
Yeah, so the fungally dominant type of compost, it favours like higher succession plants like trees, maybe berry bushes, but like trees like fruit trees and forest trees, that kind of thing. And I'd probably water it out on my fruit trees. But the Australian soils are generally poor in fungi, so it wouldn't hurt to put it out anywhere, really.
Australia is like so diverse with all the different climate areas, and Newcastle is not far from Singleton, but Newcastle is on the coast and Singleton is very inland. And I know Cessnock, which is not far from here either, they also get frost. But yeah, how does the weather's impact upon compost?
I'm really lucky. I live in a climate where I can compost all year round. When I was studying microscopy, it was online, and a lot of the students came from North America and their compost would freeze. Well, it doesn't have to freeze. If you manage it well before the snow comes, it can actually kind of just keep ticking over under the snow. But yeah, it was really hard for them to achieve like project goals and stuff because their compost slowed down. It does slow down here in Australia. It'll slow down over summer if you don't keep it moist, so if it dries out, and it can slow down over winter with the drop in temperature. But it's a misconception that you need to like put your compost in the sun or in the shade. It's not the external temperature that moderates the heat in the pile. It's generated by the microbes. And yes, they are just like us in that, in cold weather, they don't really feel like working as hard and they slow down. But if you have a really good mix and you keep the moisture up and you've got a dense enough pile, they probably won't even notice that it's winter.
So now we've moved on to a different section of your yard with a different style of compost bin. So talk to us about this style of composting. Is it very reminiscent of the one you grew up with that your dad did?
It is. It's a lot less fancy, but I would say that this is pretty much like the real like Aussie backyard compost style. So it's a bay system, so 3 walls, and the front's open, but you can stack planks up or something in front of it or a board up in front of it to hold the compost back, or you don't have to. But it's nice when you can easily remove the boards to get to the compost. And usually it's 2 or 3 bays. And you start in one bay with all your raw materials, and then once you've piled up sort of a metre by a metre of material, you turn it over into the next bay and it gets mixed. You add a bit of water and that ticks away again, and you can start filling from scratch in the first bay, and when the second bay is like looking like it's getting ready, you put it to the last bay to mature, and you just move them along in that way. It's a pretty reliable system, but I've sort of hit a snag here. This pile is mostly full. It's sort of done, but I'm composting a pair of jeans in there for an exhibition.
Right,
So
that's fabulous to see how they compost.
Yeah, how much is left of them. I went to a sustainability workshop. I can't remember the lady's name, and she'd composted a pair of jeans, and all that was left was like the waistband and the pockets. And it looked like one of those gardening aprons, and I just loved it. And it just inspired me to make people think about the fabrics that they wear and the things they put on their skin and things that they have in their life that they think are maybe okay for them or are natural, and how much of it actually is synthetic, and that this is against their skin, and if microbes won't even touch it, maybe they want to think twice about it. I just thought it would be a fun way to communicate about synthetic and organic materials. So I've got an army of people around Australia composting things at the moment, things like face shields and tea bags, underpants and socks. I took on the jeans. I think someone's doing Ugg boots. So we're going to see like how long they take to break down, if they break down, and then we'll present the final composted pieces in an exhibition, hopefully for International Compost Awareness Week in May. So that pile there, I'm kind of reluctant to touch
because it's got the jeans in it.
I don't want to disturb it. But normally I would have turned that into this one, which is my active pile. So this is
and the active
literally,
pile does look very different because it's much lower. It's got coffee grounds in it,
and it's got flies. So the flies are attracted to the fact that the carbon and nitrogen aren't very well mixed at the moment, and there are pockets of like nitrogen-y, smelly kitchen scraps, and there'll be concentrated areas of carbon. But once that gets turned to the other side, they get mixed up and really start cooking. So this is a really typical residential compost pile. It's got some prunings from garden plants, it's got lawn clippings, it's got food scraps, it's got party paper plates and some shredded paper. It's probably got a few pairs of underwear in there. It's got coffee grounds, some leaves. It's pretty much what the average household would have lying around. And I just try to layer it in layers of carbon rich and nitrogen rich, but sometimes it comes mixed already.
This is the sort of the layering as it goes. Now, talk to us again about when does it get to the point where you have to then put it in the other bay? Like when it gets full?
This is about your own tolerance, your own preference. So once you've filled the bay, it'll usually sink if you take too long to turn it, so you can fill it up a little bit more. But you can go by heat. You can put your hand in and feel how hot it is. Once the heat sort of starts to subside, then you probably want to mix it again to get things in contact with new things and up the moisture. Or you can just turn it when you have time, or you can just turn it when it's full. These ones, I love these ones. As much as I do, like I'm a scientist and I love the ones where I get really biologically active things, microbes, and then I've got my fungal pile. I just love these because they're so forgiving. I can just pile everything in here as I get it, kind of in nitrogen carbon layers, but if they're not, it doesn't matter because it'll get turned eventually. There'll be pockets, stenchy pockets, there'll be dry pockets, it'll just get turned eventually. It is so forgiving. And I think part of that is the sheer volume. People really struggle with those compost tumblers, and they're always marketed as an easy solution. Councils hand them out, and people think that they're just failures when they can't use them. But those systems are actually quite dependent on the composter having a decent knowledge of carbon to nitrogen ratios, moisture, actually turning it. If you fill them too full, they get too heavy and people just give up on them. But they're not in contact with the soil, and that can be quite forgiving. So
these ones are flat to the ground. Yep. Unlike the other two that we've just seen, they're on pallets.
That's to get the airflow underneath, but insects can still come and go, and lizards and things can still come and go. The downside to the good old backyard pile that you kind of set and forget is you might get mice. I kind of think of them as a pro rather than a con because my neighbours have chickens, or you can just recompost the mice. But they're part of the system. They're detritivores. They break things down. I've never had snakes, but I would rather the mice out here than in the house. So
exactly. Yeah. So if someone was to start out at home, this, unless you've got like a patio or a flat or something. So this kind of system is something that you'd recommend because it's easy, it's
I think it's the most
unforgiving.
forgiving, having a base
Most
system.
unforgiving, yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of just pile it up until you've got enough material, and then you can spend one weekend. Oh, there's a black soldier fly. See that big fly?
Oh, yes. Is that a soldier fly?
And they're really
Is that what they look
docile.
like?
Flies
Okay.
are really annoying. Black
Yeah.
soldier flies are not annoying.
No, they're
at
not
all.
annoying.
They're
That
very
one's just
docile.
sitting there.
Yeah.
It's quite large.
Yeah.
Just sort of, all right, it's just sort of a little one. Whereas they don't have the buzz, buzz, buzz.
No, they're just very docile and they're not annoying. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Flies get a bad rap, They're decomposers too. And they're a good indicator that your compost is emitting smells it shouldn't.
What, the flies?
Yeah, because a good compost shouldn't smell bad.
And therefore the flies shouldn't be hanging around. So to get rid of the flies...
Manage your compost.
Manage your compost, and that could be like turning.
Yeah.
Do you add water to this?
If I'm feeling really motivated, I will. But because it's open to the atmosphere, the rain comes, the rain goes. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's moist. And that's why I think it's still the best system. And you can build them out of anything. It doesn't have to look fancy.
Yeah, because yours is corrugated iron around the back sides, some support teams which look like pine, and then you've got like an insert system that you can put timbers at the front. Where does that completed compost go?
That goes to these veggie gardens or any of my ornamental gardens, but it'll go to the veggie gardens first, and that one's, I push it along pretty quick, so 3 months.
3 months of a household.
Like, we don't have a lot of food scraps. They get shared between the worms and the bay compost, but most of that would be garden organics. Yeah, probably weeds.
What's the difference between hot composting and cold composting?
Hot composting, which is generated by the microbes, also it deals with weed seeds and pathogens, but there's no reason why you can't cold compost. It still produces a beautiful, rich soil amendment. It might just take longer. Both should have time to mature. The hot, sometimes it happens on its own. You get the right balance, you strike the right balance and it heats up. Sometimes you just don't, and it just, there's nothing wrong with having a cold compost pile that just sits there and chugs along. I mean, that's the beauty of compost. It's going to happen with or without you. The human intervention usually strives to heat it up, to get it going faster and to deal with pathogens and weed seeds. But I mean, the weeds are going to come back. They're in the air, birds carry them in, they're on your boots, they're in your garden anyway. That's not really necessary to eliminate weed seeds. And pathogens, they're pathogens that are in the air around anyway. Yeah.
You know the compostable bags? Can you put that in your normal compost?
I'm opposed to them in principle. They're single-use items, you don't need them. If you want to line your caddy, use a cabbage leaf. You can't use paper because FOGO doesn't accept paper waste, but I line my compost caddy with a piece of paper or a kitchen towel or whatever. Even though they're compostable, they can cause trouble at the waste management facilities because some people use plastic bags, some people use compostable bags, and they're not sure which is which. They end up having to hand open them all, or sometimes they just put it all to landfill, to hard basket. So I prefer not to use them at all. I suggest people use them for their dog poo. I can compost them in my compost bins, which get hot enough for long enough. I also can compost some coffee cups, the ones that are truly compostable. There are 2 logos. There's Home Compostable Certified and Industry Compostable Certified. You can check them on the web. And a lot of products have these greenwashing labels that, say that they're compostable or biodegradable. Biodegradable means it breaks down into smaller pieces but still may not actually truly compost. And compostable may be only compostable in industry, but they are improving a lot, and the logo system with certifiable home compostable and industry compostable helps a lot. I can compost the local cafe's cups. If a few get left in the coffee ground bin, I just compost them now.
Do they use a certain type of coffee cup?
Yes. You have to be careful too that some products have PFAS on them, even if they're biodegradable or compostable. The best thing is take a keep cup or ask if you can borrow one. But usually companies, you can check, if you look at the cup, check what company made it, you can go to their website, and if they're certifiable compostable, they'll have that on their website because they'll be proud to say it. And if it's anything else, you can't trust it.
What about not the tumblers, but the black compost bins that you don't have to tumble, that they just stay on the ground?
The Jedi ones or the Gedi ones, they look like Daleks.
Yes, they're
a great system too.
They look like Daleks.
Yeah, they're a great system too. They're open to the ground, so it takes a little bit of the pressure off the composter because nature's doing its thing. It has a lid so you can control the moisture a bit better, but the moisture can escape if it gets too wet. They're a little hard to turn though, unless you've got a little space. You can sort of pull the whole thing off and put it next to it and then turn it back into itself. Or you can get a compost turner, but I find they're a little bit hard on the wrists.
But a pitchfork, would that be the tool of choice?
I'm a pitchfork fan, but you need a lot of elbow room to use that.
Yeah, okay. So that's why the spin system is more manageable for a lot of people.
And I'll get up on there and I'll stand on there and turn it into there, and it's good exercise, really good exercise. And like I said, those compost microbes, they elicit serotonin, oxytocin. They just make you feel fantastic. It's very rewarding.
I can see why. Thanks, Ernie, for your conversation about compost. What would be one simple tip for people to get started on their composting journey?
Yeah, I used to say just get in and have a go, but then people fail and they abandon it. So I would say get some good advice first. Go to your local community garden, talk to them, even go and help with their compost maybe before you start your own. Talk to a friend who composts. Soil Sister Singleton, you're welcome to come and ask questions. I don't know if there are many other compost consultants out there, but that's partly what I do, is just give people the confidence to compost at home or on farm or at a business. People, they instinctively know, but I think they just don't trust their gut and they just need a little confidence and just a few simple principles or a few simple bits of knowledge. Yeah.
That's great advice. I really hope that your experiment with the jeans works and love to hear more when that eventuates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the ReNewy Living Podcast. I hope you're feeling more confident and invigorated about taking a localised approach to living sustainably. Head over to my website, renewyliving.com.au, for this episode's summary and the relevant links. My ask to you is to follow or subscribe to the ReNewy Living Podcast so you can tune in to every episode. And by sharing the episodes you love, it's an easy way to help more people join the conversation about sustainability. I look forward to sharing more stories with you, ones that help lighten your environmental load and feel great to be a part of, so we can build a healthier planet for good. In people and planet kindness, from me, Marty Lee, this is the ReNewy Living Podcast.